Hello and welcome back to Six Flags Discovery Mountain in Parkitect, and straight onto the time-lapse of episode 3 today. We're going to be building our first coaster in the park, and I went for a B&M stand-up coaster, very similar to the one they've got at the entrance of Six Flags over Georgia, which is called the Georgia Scorcher. Now, you'll see me here, I've sped up the time-lapse to about 20 times for this because I don't stick with this layout. In the end, I pretty much completely redo the entire layout except from the end section here. So rather than, showing you at the normal sort of time-lapse speed, I thought I'd speed it up because there's no point in you seeing something that I didn't keep. So the idea for this, like I say, from Six Flags over Georgia, they have their stand-up coaster right near the entrance. You see it as you're coming up to the park. That's what I went for here. It's the same colour scheme, same idea, similar layout, but not exactly the same. And that's why I completely redid the layout here. I'd even put in this custom supports already, but I decided that I just wasn't happy with this layout because this is more similar to probably the only one I've been on, which is Riddler's Revenge at Magic Mountain, which wasn't really what I was going for here. I was going for one of the more smaller, I think probably older one. In fact, the Riddler's is probably the biggest one out there of these I know, or at least in the USA. I just didn't think it fitted as well. So now you will see me knock it down and start most of the layout again. Here we go then. So I made the lift hill a bit smaller, and just a simple layout. I didn't want the cobra roll. I just wanted some more traditional elements, I suppose, like vertical loops and corkscrews that you'd probably get on the earlier models of these. With these coasters, they don't tend to build them as much anymore. They're just, I don't know if they're not that popular, or the gimmick sort of wore off, like standing up on a roller coaster. Does anyone want to do that anymore? I still think some of them can be good rides. I think Riddler's Revenge is a pretty good ride. It's very intense. But yeah, I think a lot of parks now tend to prefer to get floorless coasters and stuff like that. So the layout we went for in the end is very simple. First drop into a vertical loop, and then a turnaround section with some helixes. I put a second loop in because some of them do tend to have this sort of loop that goes off to the side a bit. You can't replicate it exactly in the game, but what I've done is I've put two half loops in rather than just use the default vertical loop, and put them both going in the same direction, so it looks like it's tilted over to the side a bit, and then it does a turnaround into the corkscrew. And that is the 3 inversions we've got on the ride. Other than that, it's a lot of helixes. It's a fairly long layout, but definitely not as tall or as intense as the one that I put in the first place. And then just changing the supports there to match the Georgia Scorcher colour scheme, which I'm sure there's a scenario in the first Rollercoaster Tycoon as well where they have this colour scheme on a ride. And one of the first ever scenarios I remember playing, actually. And they're just adding in the custom supports there for the loops as well. For some reason, loops don't come with supports in the game. So it's something, if you want the loop supported, you have to add it in. And then I add the bar for the lift hill, which I have to take a couple of times of trying to put this in, because from this angle it looked right, and then I realised that the way that the supports are, it's actually not in the middle underneath the track, which it would need to be. I don't realise that until in a couple of minutes, because someone did tell me in the comments in my last series that this bar is actually for the chain lift to go back round, apparently. So that's pretty cool. Bit of educational information for you there as well. So yeah, and then I just recoloured that to make it match a bit better. I think I've got it in the right place there. No, I think I do go back to it again and revisit that. Yeah, still in the wrong place there. So just here, just adding in the catwalks as well. I am trying to do as much realism as possible, but still bearing in mind, you know, it's a game, you're not going to get everything spot on. But I do think adding little things like that makes your coasters look a bit better as well. And at this point, I had literally built pretty much the whole station, spent about an hour on it, and then the game decided to crash again. So I lost all of that and had to do it again. So this is the second time round building the station. I don't know if it's a problem with my PC. I'm going to have a look into it after I get this video up, before I start playing again, because it is very frustrating to lose a solid hour of work. For the station then, we're going for a replica almost of the Georgia Scorcher station, and using some slightly different pieces here. They're all mod pieces, these. The ancient Egypt toolbox for the roof section you see there, and I think it's either the architect toolbox or the building kit for the little curved sections there. Just wanted to mix it up, stop using the same pieces for everything, and I think they look pretty spot on to how this would be in the real park. And then I've just got some darker bricks underneath to support the whole structure. At this point I wanted bricks very similar to what I've got in the entrance building, but because they had to be a bit smaller, I had to build them off grid, so it took a bit of playing about with to get them right. They're not perfect, but you know, they're good enough. Unless you zoom in really close, you're not going to see the ones that are slightly off, if you know what I mean. So yeah, got that made out of the way there, and then copied it as a blueprint, and then just placing them all around just makes it a little bit more interesting with some variety there. And finishing it off with the borders. All in all, it didn't take too long to build this station. It's just frustrating having to do it twice. I don't think it's a problem with the game. I've not heard anyone else complaining about it crashing. I can only think that my PC is struggling at the moment. The only two things running when I play this are the game and Bandicam to record it. I do all the audio obviously separately, so I can't see it being too much of a problem with memory. We've got 20 gig of DDR4 RAM. You know, we're using a GTX 1050, so it's, you know, the system should be running it fine, and I've not had this problem much before, except from towards the end of Europa Empire, when the park was getting really big and really full and lots of pieces. It was struggling to run it sometimes, and it would crash. So all I'm doing now is saving every 5 minutes to make sure we don't lose too much. But I'm going to have a look, run a bit of run some antivirus software, see if there's a problem there, see if we can get it sorted before the next one. Here then I'm just putting in a sort of entrance sign for it, like the ride has in real life, and then I put the sign there for now, but then I actually put the actual sign in right at the end of the episode. Thought the roofs looked a bit plain then, so although this isn't accurate to the real one, I just wanted to make the roof look more interesting, so I added a few more mod pieces in there and finished it off with some borders. There we go, and I do think the station turned out alright in the end. Like I say, Six Flags Parks, a lot of their stations for their coasters and their theming is very minimal, but this is actually one where in real life it did have a bit more theming to it, and that's probably what I'm going to look for in terms of a lot of the different attractions I put in the park. I'm going to look for the ones that have got a bit more theming, so that it's more interesting than just having very basic stations everywhere. Of course there's going to be some coasters that just have to have the generic stations with the cattle pen queues that Six Flags do have everywhere. Like someone commented, like that a lot of Six Flags parks do have ugly buildings everywhere, so that is something we're going to have to be putting into the parks to get that realism. But you know, whenever I can do the theming, I will. And I think this works as a really good sort of first attraction that you see from outside the park as you're coming in. And I believe these weren't the original models for the stand-up. I think that the Togo company called Togo used to do the stand-up coasters before them and sort of paved the way for these ones, which as far as I know are quite unpopular rides. Personally, I can't say I've never been on one myself, but I do like some of the classic rides as well, so yeah, I might enjoy them. Everyone has different opinions though of what they like to ride. Personally, for me, a coaster doesn't have to be that smooth if it's a classic. You know, if it's got some good elements on it and it's an enjoyable ride. Obviously, if something's really rough like an SLC, then it's just unpleasant to ride. You only go on it for the credit. And speaking of which, we probably will put one of them in this park as well. So I feel that's something that Six Flags tend to have a lot of. For Coma SLC. Just doing the foliage here, then getting a few trees in. Always trying to vary it a bit with different colours and different styles, but I do tend to think that I end up with, you know, a lot of the same thing. Obviously I use the foliage essentials as well, but for a lot of the time I do think that the generic, like the vanilla trees, do fit in a lot nicer. We used almost always the foliage essentials for my UK park, Woodland Peak, but that was set in a wood, so it had, you know, trees everywhere. Whereas I want this to be a lot more open and just trees here and there for deco, but not like everywhere. Give a bit of variation to the fountain there then by putting a few borders around it to make it a bit more interesting. I will go back to this little area afterwards when we continue the park. It's not finalised yet. And then I was looking for something to put underneath this section where the coaster goes over the track, which is my favourite part of the ride. I think it looks really good. Lost a bit of footage there, but in the end I just went for some diagonal pieces from the same toolkit that I built the station with. It's difficult to find pieces when you're doing something diagonal because there's not anywhere near as much choice of building pieces to use, so that's sort of the best I could come up with there. and you'll see it properly afterwards. Now we're working on the transfer track and the shed for the train. These things always look pretty much the same, no matter what you do with them really. I've made this one a bit different by putting some windows around the top there. But yeah, other than that, not much to say about that. Very basic building. And then adding a backstage area in for the coaster itself. A couple of buildings there just made out of the containers from the Future and Space kit, or so maybe the Cyberpunk land kit. And then just a generic fencing around the edge to block off the whole area. But yeah, I'm starting to get into doing more of these backstage areas now. You know, and a bit more of the realism. I do think it works quite nicely. And they're always fairly simple to build. Just getting the no entry sign in there as well. Obviously the staff won't actually be able to access this area, because from a gameplay point of view they'd have no need to anyway. So I have literally just done it for aesthetics, and then I try and hide it a bit with some trees just to keep it. You will see a bit from on the ride, but I think you would in real life anyway, so when you're on the brake run and stuff. I actually end up adding quite a lot of foliage and planting around here as well, maybe more than you'd have in an actual Six Flags park, but you know, it's the entrance area. It's probably an area that they would spend quite a bit of budget on making it look a bit nicer than some areas of the park maybe. And then I just wanted to add a little bit more detail on the station there as well. So we're coming to the end of the build here, and I can honestly say I have no idea what I'm going to put in the park next. I need to start thinking about the layout of the whole park itself. Obviously it's called Discovery Mountain. We will be putting a mountain in at some point, and I'd imagine we'll be doing something similar to Ninja Magic Mountain on there, but I'm not entirely sure yet. Okay, so that's it for the time lapse today into the real-time section and the cinematic, which I'll leave you with, and we'll do a little POV and ride the coaster as well. So that's it for today then. Thank you for watching, and see you later.